in listen-only mode.
Good morning, mortgage coaches. Thanks for joining us for another Thursday Q&A training session. This is going to be a free-form session, so we're going to try and work on what you need to see the most. So just to kind of start off, if you do have questions or types of scenarios that you'd like to see specifically, go ahead and pop those into the questions area in your GoToMeeting toolbar. I'll be watching that from my other screen, so as new requests come in, I should be able to address those for you. We'll get started in just a moment here, so start thinking about what kind of scenarios you'd like to see and let me know. I'm going to pop a poll up in just a moment here with some ideas for you. We can see which ones kind of strike you as the ones that you'd like to learn most about, and then we'll take it from there. So give me just another minute. I want a few more people to get on the call, and then we'll go ahead and begin. Thanks, everyone. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. Popped up a poll real quick just to kind of find out what types of scenarios you'd like to see. You can check one or more of the following options there. There's some purchase options, refi options, open house, marketing strategies, or mobile delivery. Certainly, if you have something that's outside of those and you'd like to see that, just let us know over in the questions area. Just type it in your GoToMeeting toolbar and say, hey, I'd like to see a move up buyer presentation or whatever it is, and we'll certainly cover that for you. It looks like we've got a couple of you have voted. So far, the front runner is refinance options. Looks like mobile and marketing are bringing up the rear there. So let's get a couple more people. A third of you have voted, so get a couple more votes in here, and we'll make sure we isolate what you guys want to see. All right. Okay, perfect. Here, I'll publish the results for you. So it looks like everybody wants to see refi options, a little bit about mobile delivery, and then some marketing strategies. So that sounds like a good direction for us to go today. So we'll go ahead and start off with some refinance options. I know that it can be difficult. As a matter of fact, let me hide these results here so we're back to our screen. It can be difficult, especially when you're dealing with refinances that are a little bit short or you're getting cash out. It's kind of difficult to try and isolate the cash to close. So I'm going to show you a couple of quick tricks here that can help you make this a little bit easier for your refinance opportunities. All right, so we'll start from scratch here. I'm going to start a brand new client. I'm just going to call this one Joe Refi. Now, for those of you who are brand new to the system, you're going to notice I'm skipping quite a few fields in here. Now remember, the Edge Wizard, you don't necessarily even have to go left to right. You can input whatever you'd like at any given time. Really, the only thing that's even necessary to generate a link is that first name field. Everything else, you're going to generate a blank presentation, but everything else is actually, it's completely optional. So things like co-borrower, if there's no co-borrower, I'm not going to put something in there. In a case where maybe I don't even know the home phone of my borrower yet, I can certainly skip that as well. But there's certain critical elements that you're definitely going to want to have in there for when you're doing refinance transactions. And these can be anything from an annual mortgage review to a cash out refi. Maybe you want to resub a second. There could be any number of reasons that you'd want to do a refinance. Even buying somebody out of MI, there's lots of different scenarios that you could do. I'm going to show you a straight rate and term refi first, and then we can kind of build on it from there. So probably the most critical part here is make sure you check own when you're doing a refinance, because that's going to ask you the questions about a current mortgage. If I was to check rent, it's going to try and guide me through a rent versus own presentation, which is definitely not what I'm trying to do here. Now, referred by, obviously, if you do have a referral partner that is giving you this lead, certainly want to have it in there so you can give them some love later on this one. But again, not a required field. Partner email, just so you know what this is. If you are working with a partner on this client and you want your partner to be able to receive those same alerts that you get when your borrower views the presentation, you would need to enter your partner's email address in here. And then when you get to the end of the wizard, there's going to be a checkbox to notify them as well. So just kind of keep that in mind, especially on your purchase transactions when you're working with a realtor partner. It's a great way to be able to loop the realtor in without having to do any extra work. Now, friendly name, this one here gets a lot of confusion. Some people think this is the nickname for the client. Some people, put all kinds of stuff in here. Really, this is just a free-form field for you to identify what this presentation is. So for instance, I'm just going to put refinance for primary residence. And the only reason I do this is if I'm going to do multiple presentations for this person, maybe I'm going to show them some purchase options for a new property, or they got to refi another investment property or something like that. I'll at least know which one it is when I'm looking through my client list. Now, when we get to the goals section, there's only one that you don't want to check. When you're doing a refinance transaction, don't check purchase a new home. That actually eliminates the questions about the current mortgage, and you need those ones for the refinance transaction. So any other one would be perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and choose lower my interest rate. And now we get some questions about their current mortgage scenario. Now, this is kind of tough for some people because, especially, it really depends on how much information you currently have. Are you actually talking with this borrower? Did you get this from a lead sheet? Where's the information from and how easy is it to obtain? And oftentimes, especially when you're working off a lead sheet, you don't have a whole lot of information about their current mortgage. You may know their payment, you might know their rate, but unless you've pulled credit, you probably don't know what the original balance was. You probably don't know when they took the loan out unless you're actually talked to the borrower. So I'm going to show you a very minimalist approach to this, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like when you do have all the information. So let's say I'm working directly off a lead sheet here. All I've got is I know how much they're paying, and I know what their current balance is. Now, this first screen here, you notice this is pretty minimal. We're asking for the monthly payment. This doesn't show up anywhere on the presentation, but this is a great spot for you to indicate what your borrower has told you or what you got off your lead sheet. So let's say $1,700, right? Now, the property value or purchase price, in this case, because it's a refi, this is going to be property value. This might be something you don't know as well. You can kind of take a stab at it based on, maybe do his estimate or something like that, do an AVM if you do have a property in mind. But if it's a TBD and all you've got is mortgage information, you don't have any property address information, you can leave this blank and come back to it later. Now, original appraised value, that's kind of a deep dive. So that would be one that you probably won't have when you're working off a lead sheet. The reason this comes into play is if their current mortgage has mortgage insurance on it, the loan to value cutoffs are based on the original value when they took out that loan. They're not based on today's value. So we've given you an additional spot to put the value when they took out the loan. So that LTV cutoff is correct. But in this case, I'm going to assume no MI. So we're going to go ahead and leave this blank, and we're going to go to the next field. Now, current total payoff amount. This one's actually a really cool tool because if you don't have all the information for the current mortgage, this field will at least allow you to get the cash to close right. So off your lead sheet, let's say that their outstanding balance is $250. I'm going to put that in the payoff amount field. Now, by doing this, I actually don't need to complete any more information for the current mortgage in order for the cash to close to come out right. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Now we get into the current mortgage information. Again, information I don't have. I don't know what their rate is. I have no idea what their term or original loan amount, where their first payment date was. I might know I know the remaining balance because I just put that in the previous field. But realistically, I don't have any of this other information until I call my borrower. But I want to put this together for them and get a valid proposal going. So I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward. Monthly costs, no idea. So I'm going to go ahead and continue forward. I probably won't have any detailed information about my borrower. If you are going to show tax benefit when you're doing your analysis, you'd want to put something in the tax bracket field. And you can kind of guess at these. The brackets are pretty big. And if you wanted to check that out, just hit Find Tax Bracket. It's going to open up a site that gives you a pretty easy grid to refer to. I mean, you can see 25% tax bracket. It's a $60,000 disparity in annual income. So, when we're looking at a $300,000 house, I'm probably going to choose 25 or 28 for my bracket. But again, that's only if you wanted to show the tax benefit. Oftentimes I see people not putting the tax bracket in on refinance transactions, specifically because your tax benefit actually goes down in most cases if you're paying less interest on the new mortgage. So again, this is more personalized information. I'm going to go ahead and proceed forward. The goals, I wouldn't have any idea. I'm working off a lead sheet. So now I get into my new products. Now, what do I know about this person? I know what their payment is. It's $1,700, and I know how much they owe. So I have enough to at least start putting some new proposed scenarios together. So I'm going to call this one New 30 Fixed. And the first thing to do is flip the refi switch. We want to flip this to yes, and you can see it automatically brings in what my payoff amount was as my new base loan amount. Now, because I didn't have a property value in there, it assumed this $200,000. It's obviously going to be more than this, so I'd probably put something like $325 there, just so it rounds out. And again, you can do an estimate online to find out more information about this. Oops. Now the interest rate on the new mortgage that I can get them, let's say I can get them 4% on a 30-year term. And if I didn't enter any closing costs right now at all, what I'm looking at is a straight rate and term refinance. I've got a new loan amount for $250. I got a payoff amount back in my assumption section of $250. That would be a zero cash due, zero cash to close. Now, obviously, I do want to make sure that I append my closing costs in here. And most times on refis, you're going to try and roll this in if you have enough room on the LTV level. So pay attention to this little area over here on the right, because this actually does tell you where you're at in terms of loan to value. And that's, of course, based on my guessed value here. But I'm going to go into my closing cost detail, and I'm just going to grab one of my refi templates. So there's my conventional 30 refi. And I might not have anything in that template. Oh, there it goes. Okay, good. And you can see I've just got some basic figures in here. If you have not created any fee templates for yourself, create a few of them. You really only need 8 to be perfectly proficient in Edge. And that's going to be a purchase and a refi for each of the 4 following options: conventional, FHA, VA, USDA. As long as you have purchase and refi templates for each of those 4, you're pretty much covering the whole board. Now, if you have very specific types of programs that you offer, say for instance you offer a silent second or a grant program or something like that, you'd probably want to have a fee template for that as well, just in case there's any additional fees that are associated with those that wouldn't normally be associated with some of your other templates. But there's not a whole lot of variables between the FHA, VA, and conventional. Usually, you'll find that some of the differences are: do they require a desk appraisal? Do they actually require a pest inspection? Stuff like that. Those are going to be the variables that you'd want to make sure you represent. And actually, I got a question from Michael. He says, can you also do a scenario on combining the first and second mortgage as well as doing a refi where there's a balloon payment on the current first? Sure, no problem at all. Let's do our rate and term first, and then I'll go back in and modify this, and we can cover the scenario you're talking about. All right, so for my refinance transaction, you notice I've got all the boxes checked to add to the loan amount. This is going to finance all my fees in. So it's going to increase my loan amount, which is actually $250 right now, by the amount of these fees. Now, if you don't have them checked already, you can use this box here, and that'll do all or none. So you can toggle it on and off. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply this to my loan. So I've got all my fees in there. They are financed in. I'll put in my prepaid interest. And I'll probably want to roll that in too. Now, because I financed everything in, I'm still going to end up with a zero cash due at close. So that's perfect. I've got a direct payoff of the loan, and then all my fees are financed into the loan. Now you can see when I move forward here, my LTV is increased. We're now up to 78.32, but that's a pretty comfortable level. I'm still under 80, so I'm not going to have to require MI. Now, because I didn't put in any hazard or taxes on my initial mortgage here, because I don't have that information, I'm going to leave it off the new mortgages too, so I have a direct P&I comparison between these. Now, if you needed to earmark any reserves, you'd want to make sure and put those in. And those automatically funnel reserve. Actually, in this case, because I don't have hazard and property taxes, I'm going to leave those out because I have no idea what those are, so my reserves wouldn't be correct. So next step is add an additional product. I've got a 30-year fixed. Let's do a 15-year. And so that I don't have to redo all the work I just did, I'm going to copy that 30-year scenario. So I'll hit copy from, and I'll copy that 30 fixed. And then all I'm going to do is change some of the variables here. So my rate's probably going to be a little bit lower, and I need to change my term. My closing costs are already there, so I really don't need to do anything with these. I don't have any monthly costs to speak of. So what I'm looking at here is simply a 30-year fixed proposal and a 15 fixed proposal. Now remember, I don't have information about their current mortgage. So as I continue going through the wizard, you're going to see that we've got some weird comparisons going on here. It's looking like the new mortgages are going to cost more than the current, but that's just because we don't know what the current really looks like. I'll show you how to solve this in just a second. Continuing forward in the wizard, we may or may not have a property address. If you don't, that's okay. TBD is fine. And then when you get to the section where you're going to select what type of presentation this is, you're going to choose total cost. But the critical part of this is if you're doing a refinance where you don't have all the current mortgage information, simply hide the current mortgage. Uncheck the box here. Now, that's going to eliminate all those negatives that I saw back in my analysis screen that were showing that the new mortgages are going to cost more. Now I've got some default payment notes here so that I remember to tell my clients whether there's taxes and insurance in the payment. So I'm going to say they are not. And then when we get to the end of the presentation, all I'm going to need to do now is put a quote date on this and then generate my link. So let's take a look at what this looks like. Now, for those of you who joined a little bit later, we actually threw a poll out there to see what everybody would like to cover the most today. Refinance took the cake there, and then we're going to talk about a few marketing strategies and some mobile options as well. But right now, we're focusing on what does it look like when you're trying to do a refinance, but you don't have all the information for the current mortgage. So you're working off a lead sheet where all you have is maybe a payment, you might have a balance, and that's about it. So what I showed was how to input the payoff amount field in the assumptions area so that your cash to close comes out correctly. And then when we got to the end, I hid the current mortgage because I'm only going to show the new refi opportunities. And as you can see here, my 15-year fixed obviously has the higher payment because it's got a shorter term. So that savings of 651 is the 30-year fixed is showing a savings versus that 15-year. Now, when we look at the savings over 60 months, it's a substantially different story. And the reason for this is actually because the savings over 60 months is not the monthly savings multiplied by 60. If you're brand new to the software, that may be something you think, but this calculation is totally different. When we're looking at this short-term calculation, what we're looking to isolate is just the unrecoverable costs of each one of these loan scenarios. So what we do is we start off with how much interest in MI is each of these programs going to pay over that 5-year period of time. Then we add any closing and points. That gives us a total cost for each of those mortgages over the same period of time. Now, obviously, they have differing amounts of principal paid, substantially different. You've paid almost $70,000 in principal on the 15-year. You've only paid $24,000 on the 30-year. And when we take a look at this, obviously we're retaining this in the form of equity. So that's a good thing. Now, when we look at the calculation for unrecoverable costs, we're really just going to isolate the stuff they can't get anything back on. They're not going to retain this. They're not getting any equity off this part of the payment. They may get a tax benefit, in which case, if I did put in the tax bracket, it would subtract that tax benefit from this formula. But we're looking at interest in MI plus closing costs gives us that total cost for the 60-month period of time. We compare those two figures against each other, and that's how we're getting the net savings here. So this is a perfect example for how one mortgage can appear to be giving a savings on the monthly level, but when we look at it over the short term, over the 5-year period of time, and we look at how much interest is this person really going to pay as a result of selecting this mortgage, there's a substantial difference. Now, anytime I put out a proposal like this, I would probably also put out a third option that is called 30-year fixed with reinvestment. And that's what would be if you show them, and I'll go back in there and create this, but what that would do is it's going to show them what would happen if they got that 30-year note, but they made the payment of the 15-year or even part of the payment of the 15-year. I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'll call this one 30-year accelerate. And I'm going to copy my 30-year note. I don't need to make any modifications at all to this. Where I'm going to modify it is in my reinvestment strategy. So if we go into the Adjust Reinvestment Strategy button, we can earmark a reinvestment. And you can see this 30-year accelerated, right? I've got a 30-year payoff on my regular one. I've got a 15-year payoff on my 15-year note. My difference is $1,200 versus $1,800. What if I proposed a middle ground? What if I said, you know what, why don't you make a $1,500 payment? So we'll do $287 extra on the payment per month. That now pays off this loan in 20.83 years. So now I've got a middle ground. I've got the flexibility of a 30-year mortgage, but I'm asking the borrower to make additional payments to get it up just a little bit to a $1,500 payment, which is going to net them a just short of 21-year payoff versus carrying it for the full 30-year term. Now, once you hit a right or left arrow on this wizard, it actually triggers the saves. So if we go back to our analysis, this should have already updated, and yes, it did. And you can see what we're looking at here. This 30-year, it has the same amount of monthly savings as the 15-year if we're just looking at P&I payments. But with our reinvestment, check it out. Just doing that extra payment every month, we're obviously paying down principal faster, but we're we're also reducing the amount of interest we have to pay over that same period of time. So I'm going to save $1,800 in interest by making that additional payment to knock down my principal and knock down my interest over time. All right. So that's just your basic when you have very little information about a current mortgage and you want to show some new refinance opportunities. Now, if we do have information about that current mortgage, we can certainly always go back in there and fill out what we know. So let's say we did find out that 325 was a valid property value. We found out that they took this mortgage out a few years back. And their original was, let's say, 265. And they had a 5% interest rate on a 30-year term. And notice I overwrote the remaining balance. You can do that at any time. The remaining balance is just calculated for you based on the regular amortized payments, but if they've made additional payments, this can oftentimes be different from what Edge calculates. Now, the funny thing is, check out our P&I payment. We've got $1,422 here, but back in the previous screen, I noted that the reported payment on this one is $1,700. So what's the difference? That would be a question I need to ask my borrower. Is there mortgage insurance that's not being disclosed on this lead? Is it incorporating taxes and insurance? There could be any number of things that would prompt this to increase. But as it stands now, I've got enough information to show my current mortgage. So I'm going to go back to the first screen of the presentation here. I'm going to go ahead and check the box. And now we'll see when we go back to our live version, this is going to update to show a current mortgage as opposed to our new options. And we're going to see that a lot of the savings are going to look a little bit different because we're no longer comparing them against each other. We're comparing them to the current mortgage. So let's go ahead and refresh this real quick here. Oops, did I not trigger a save? Let's try that one more time. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a current mortgage in there. You can see that the other ones are now being benchmarked against the current mortgage. So the 30-year fixed, it's going to save him $209 a month. The 15-year would cost him $442 more. This 30-year with acceleration, it still saves him $209, but we're going to show a reinvestment of that $275 or $280 that I had recommended. So when you do have the information, obviously it makes a lot more sense because when we get into the savings over 60 months and we're looking at the amount of interest that they're paying on the new loans versus what they're paying on the current, you're definitely saving them money in every opportunity here. Now we look at the long-term interest in MI over a 15-year period, we're substantially saving them money all the way down the line. So these are one that's pretty easy. Obviously, we're reducing an entire point off the interest rate. But when you get closer and you have something like 4.25 or 4.125, and you're going down to 4, it may not make sense for them to do the refi. And you'll know because it won't show a savings here in the short term because they haven't saved enough interest to overcome their closing costs. And that's a case where I'd still send it to the borrower. I'd show them, look, I got you a great rate last time, and right now is not the best opportunity for refinance, and here's why. But I'm going to continue watching your mortgage for you. I'm going to send you one of these every year, or anytime there's a major movement in the marketplace that happens to drop rates where I think it might be a good opportunity for you. But it's a passive way to market to your clients, and it's a very easy way to keep top of mind with them by just doing these annual mortgage reviews. Les's question, are there printed scripts in the library? So there are some scripts, actually, Les, if you look in the handout section of the GoToMeeting toolbar, there's one called the Getting Started Guide. That does have a bunch of scripts in it. We kind of compiled a lot of them together, along with some walkthroughs on how to do very specific functions on the mobile, stuff like that. So check that out. Go ahead and download that, and it's about 30 or 40 page PDF. Got lots of goodies in there. I would highly encourage you to check it out. All right, so let's change this up a bit, and we're going to go back to what Michael was talking about. He's asking, can we do a scenario combining a first and second? So we'll start with that. And I'm just going to call this one Combo Loan Refi. Now, notice when you make something a marketing report, the only reason I did this is so it lops off a lot of the fields I know I'm not going to fill in. And since I've got a report headline on here, I don't even need a friendly name. I know what this is now just based on the headline, so I can continue forward. I do want to lower my interest rate, or maybe I can even pay off debts. There's a whole number of reasons you'd want to do this, but just as long as you don't select purchase a new home when you're doing a refi, you're good to go. Put in our property value. Now, very critical when you're doing a combo loan, when you're resubordinating a second, or you're showing a couple of different options, one doing a resub and one paying off both. Don't use the current payoff amount field. This applies a single payoff amount to all scenarios across the board. And when you're doing a resub, you're going to have a different payoff than you would have for paying off both mortgages. So anytime you're dealing with a first and second current and you want to show a couple of different options there, don't use this payoff amount field. Michael's question, why are you doing it as a marketing presentation? Michael, that was just basically so I could lop off all the information I knew I wasn't going to fill in, but it certainly doesn't make any difference at all. All the marketing checkbox does here is on the finalized report, it doesn't show borrower information like first and last name. It'll show a headline instead, and then it also hides any property information, so the property address fields and such. But really, I was just trying to make the screen a little bit easier to read. You could certainly do this as an individual; it wouldn't change a thing. All right, so we've got our property value in there. Now it's time to prepare our first and second liens. So let's do our first lien. Again, we'll say they took that out a couple of years ago, and that one was for 200. They got that at 4.75 on a 30-year term. My remaining balance got calculated for me, but certainly if it's different, I could overwrite this. And then if I know my hazard and taxes, I'd want to put those in. If you don't, that's okay. We can just do P&I comparisons. But the critical part here is you want to make sure and choose yes, this does have a second lien. And when you do that and hit the right arrow, it's going to ask you for information about that lien. So in this case, we'll say it was a purchase combo. So they took them out at the same time. That one was 50,000, and I'm going to say that this was interest only for the entire term. So this is just a purchase money HELOC. And let's say it was prime plus 1, so 4.25. So when we're looking at this, obviously I'm looking at an interest-only mortgage where I'm assuming they've just made the interest-only payments, no pay down on this at all. However, if they had, you can certainly modify this remaining balance to be whatever has actually been drawn out. All right, so I've got my first and second done. Now I'm going to skip past some of these questions here and just get into our new product offerings. Now the first one we want to see is what does it look like if you combine the first and second? Now there's a real easy way to do this in Edge. This refi switch here will automatically bring in the combined total payoff for those two liens. So if I select yes, you can see it brought in the new base loan amount, 243,401. That's exactly the combination of the existing balance of the first and second liens right now. So if I did nothing further in this report, it would be a zero cash out, zero cash due. But I'm going to call this one pay off both. And we'll pop in the rate that we can get for them. We'll apply one of our closing cost templates, and you can see my LTV is pretty low on this one. So I'm going to make sure and finance in all the costs here. I'll pull my conventional refi, got everything financed in, and apply to the loan. I didn't show any taxes or insurance on the current mortgage, so I'm not going to show them on the new mortgage. And you can see I'm showing a savings here, about $21, something like that. So not a huge savings. This might actually be a good case for when you should resubordinate. And, oftentimes when you're looking at a purchase money HELOC or, any kind of an interest-only second where they have flexibility to make an additional payment beyond that, those are keepers. Oftentimes, you're going to want to resub those because if they're based on prime, prime hasn't moved in a long time. We've been at 3.25 for quite a while. It hasn't been fluctuating much. So if they were based on, say, a prime plus 1, like I've indicated here, that kind of mortgage, I'd probably want to hang on to that. Steve has a question. He says, hey, Jacob, it's Steve. So the key here is to leave blank the current payoff box so that you have the flexibility of options for payoff and subordination of a second. Absolutely, Steve. That is probably the number one thing. If you can take anything out of this part of the training, is that payoff box can be your best friend or it can be your nightmare, depending on what type of scenario you're doing. So you hit it right on the head there. If you want the flexibility of using multiple types of payoffs for the different loan scenarios you're showing, make sure to leave that payoff amount field blank. All right, so let's add another product. Now we've shown when we're paying off both. Now let's show what that resubordination looks like. Now this is the one that trips people up quite often. I'm just going to call this one resub second. Now the key piece here is you're going to copy from, but you're going to copy from the current mortgage scenario because we want to bring in both the current first and the current second. Then we're just going to modify the current first, leave the current second alone. So I'll do copy from. I'm going to select the current scenarios. This is going to bring in both the first and second. And Michael has a question real quick. I want to make sure that's addressed. Do you also want to leave the payoff field blank when only comparing a current first to a new first? And see, that one actually is kind of optional, Michael. It won't hurt you either way. The whole reason we have that payoff amount field there is because oftentimes the remaining balance, which is what we would normally use for the payoff in our system, the remaining balance may not be what's actually going to be on the payoff demand. So if you already have a payoff demand and you know it's $1,000 less than what the current balance reported on the credit card is, you can put that payoff demand in the payoff field so that your cash to close comes out right. Now, if you haven't run credit yet or something like that, you don't know what the payoff demand is yet, you don't necessarily know when their next payment is even going to hit versus when you're going to be closing your loan, you can just leave the payoff amount field blank and allow the current mortgage balance to be the payoff amount. So that's what Edge will try to use unless you use the payoff amount field. All right, so let's get back to our resub here. We've copied in the current mortgage scenario here. Now, all we're going to do is you want to make note of the remaining balance of this first lien. It's $193,401. So I like copying that. Then we're going to flip the refi switch because this first lien is going to be a refi. Now, remember what I told you about the refi switch. It brings in the combined balances of the existing liens as your base loan amount. That's why I copied that first loan amount current balance there. So I'll paste that in. We'll put in whatever the rate is that we can get on this new first. We'll apply our closing costs. And notice, because I used the copy button, it's already checked yes, this product does include a second lien. I don't need to make any modifications for it though. This is an existing second. It's closed in the past. This is not a refi. So we're just subordinating this lien. We're going to leave it exactly as it is. If there was any costs for resubordination, you could certainly put them in here. I'd actually add them to the itemization on that first lien because it makes more sense to have all the costs in one place, but completely up to you. And then take a look at what we've got now. So we've got our current mortgage, existing first and second. Paying off both with a single lien would save them $21 a month. Resubordinating that second and leaving that second alone, just paying off the first, it's actually going to save them a little bit more money per month. And when we look at the short and long-term effects, you can see that paying off both actually nets the most savings in terms of interest. Remember, that second is an interest-only loan, so they're just paying interest on there. Resubbing the second is still going to save them money on interest over time versus the current mortgage, but not quite as much as paying off both. So you've got some questions to ask here. You know, if the borrower is going to be saving this money, should I structure a reinvestment strategy? Should I do something with this $86 so that I can either put it straight back into the mortgage or maybe put it into a new nest egg? You know, let's talk about the other goals that this borrower has. You know, they've told us that they want to refinance because they've got these two liens and they want to see what would happen if they would pay them both off versus keeping one of them. But did we ask them any of the other questions in the wizard? Did we find out things like, what are your goals? You know, do you have any kids? When are they going to college? How long do you want to be in this house? How old do you want to be when you pay off this house? You know, those kind of questions really determine what kind of metrics you should be using for the long and short term areas. You know, that 5-year point, yeah, it's relative to us, it's relative to the loan estimate, but is it relative to your borrower? You know, if their kid's going to school in 7 years, I'd probably want to make this 84. Les has a question real quick. Oh, I'm sorry, Michael first and then Les. He says, so only use the payoff field when paying off credit card debt. That is one case when you could use it, Michael, definitely. You could also use it if, like I was saying before, if you're kind of midway in a timeline and you know that by the time you close, their balance is actually going to be lower than what's reported on the credit on the pulled credit. In that case, you would use the payoff amount field. But for most cases, when you're doing a single or when you know the payoff is just going to be the current balance, leave the payoff amount field blank. But as Michael mentioned, and for the rest of you out there, that when you're doing a credit card debt payoff, you can certainly include that credit card debt payoff in that payoff amount field. So you boost that up to be enough to cover the credit card itself. There's other ways to do it that are probably it's a little more intensive, but they're a little more detailed, and your client would understand them better because it's not just hidden in a payoff amount field. If you want to check that out, I've done a video for you. Click on help when you get the chance and just type in debt consolidation. And there's actually a video where I show you how to use the itemization and the fees to show the debt payoff. So that might actually be a better way to do it. Les's question. Um, he says the HELOC will require principal payments after 10 or 15 years. Then it makes sense to pay off the HELOC. So that's an important question. So absolutely, Les, very important question. Is this HELOC going to mature sometime soon? Are they going to have to be starting to make the full principal and interest payments? Or is this one where it just stays interest only through the entire term? Is it just an open line of credit? So those questions definitely you want to ask your client. And certainly if that was the case where it does need to translate and become a fully amortized loan somewhere around the 10-year point, back in the assumptions, instead of just keeping this one as a fixed interest only loan like I've done, I'd probably want to either change my interest only. If it's 10 years, I'd put 120 here. So then after 10 years, this is going to recast and it's going to become a fully amortized loan with whatever the remaining balance is. Now, if it was adjustable as well, and most of most of them are reliant on Prime. But like I said, Prime hasn't moved in years. So I probably still leave it fixed unless you really want to try and prognosticate as to what you think Prime's going to be doing in the next 20 years. And you want to try and earmark some minor adjustments there. I don't think it's worth your time, is what I'm telling you. I think you're probably better off leaving this as a fixed loan. But like Les said, make sure and ask about this. Make sure and find out if this is interest only for the entire term of the HELOC, or if this is going to have a recast and become fully amortized at some point. All right. Oops, I got rid of my interest only there. I need to put that back. There we go. All right, so we've shown our current mortgage, we've shown a way to pay off both mortgages, and we've shown a way to resubordinate the second. Now, if I'm going to do this proposal, and I'm showing an $86 savings here, I'm going to put that somewhere. So I'm going to go into my adjust reinvestment strategy, and there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can start paying down the principal on that second. So that $86, just putting it back into the second every month, you've now reduced your term to 23 years. Now, like Les was saying, if you've got a period where you know that this is going to recast, you probably want to have them start putting money into this so that they can pay it off before that recast point. If it's 15 years, let's start eyeballing the figures. 150 will get me an 18-year payoff. Let's look at 175, 16, 200, 15 years. So that's perfect. I've now found out that if I want them to pay this off before it's scheduled to recast and go full AM, they need to put an extra $200 a month into this payment. And then they're not going to have a balloon payment where everything becomes due at the end of the term. They're not going to have that recast to a full AM. So this is one of the strategies I might recommend. Take that $86, put it back into the second to pay it down a little faster. Or, in the case of a recast like Les was talking about, when it recasts, it'll be recasting at a much lower balance at that 15-year point. It's down to 28 instead of sitting at 50 the entire time. So it would cause a much lower payment when it does recast. So great opportunity there. Now, if they're not quite so worried about that HELOC and they really do need to develop a nest egg, remember I said kids going to school in 7 years. So what are we going to do? Do they have any money in the bank right now? Well, they've got an investment that they've been babying for a little while. It's in a 401k or something like that. And they're getting a 1% rate of return on it. That's going to continue to grow. And at 15 years, or we can adjust this back to 7 years so we can see what it looks like. But in this case, at 15 years, they're really not getting a whole lot of growth out of that. But what if we took that $86 they're saving every month and simply put it back into that account? Look at what our asset has grown to over that same period of time. So this is a great strategy to be able to use to just show people how to kind of divert their wealth. Now, part of the argument you're going to get back, and I get this a lot from the originators when I'm training them, is I can tell the client until I'm blue in the face that they need to put this money back into the bank, but they're just going to go and spend it on something else. That's okay. That's not what we're about. What we're about is showing them what their options are and showing them some plans that they could abide by. And if they did, this would be their net result. If they don't, if they do it partially, it could be a little bit lower. But the goal here is we know we're going to be saving them a little bit of money. Let's show them a plan for what they can do with it. And even if we're going to show that they're not doing anything at all with this money, they don't have any accounts at all, even if we just show that $86 savings every month, if we show what happens to it over a 15-year period of time with absolutely zero um, rate of return on it, this is just 86 times 15 years. That's $15,000 they would have had in their pocket over the 15-year period of time. So, it's up to you in terms of how you want to show it, how deep you want to go on the investment here. But certainly you do have options. You can put them back into that second. You can even start paying down the first. Put it back into their current savings account at a zero return. You can put it into a new investment vehicle at a higher return. Michael's question, he says, okay, got it. Do we include the credit card debt or both the credit card debt as well as the mortgage payoff? So that would be both, Michael. You'd want to lump them together because you want to make sure that your new mortgage is not only paying off their current mortgage, but it's paying off the credit card debt. So you definitely want to lump those together if you're going to use the payoff field for that. All right, good questions. Good questions. I think we've beaten refinances to death. So why don't we make a little bit of a shift here? We got about 20 minutes left in the call. The second most requested option was mobile delivery of your value proposition. So hopefully you guys have had the chance to attend our mobile conversations call that Dave and I hold every month or every Wednesday. I know a couple of you on this call. I recognize that you were actually on there yesterday, which is great. I'm thrilled to see you guys are attending these sessions. When we talk about mobile delivery or value proposition, what we're really saying there is, what do you tell people when you meet a new realtor prospect, when you meet a new borrower prospect? What do you tell people about how you take care of your clients? You can say, well, I've got fast underwriting times. I got great rates at my disposal because I work for a bank that really supports me, or a broker that really supports me. I mean, you got a lot of things that you can say about the financing aspect of it, but what about the service end of it? What are you doing for your clients? What types of education are you able to deliver to your clients, and how does that set you apart from other people? Now, the easy way to do this is there's a set of scenarios that you just kind of want to have at your fingertips, ready to show off at any time. And the reason I mentioned this is really a mobile move is because it's much easier to show them on your phone versus, hey, why don't you come to my office? We'll take a look at my computer, or here, let me break open my laptop. I'll show you on the computer exactly what kind of stuff I do. Let me walk you through the wizard, and it becomes a lot of noise. So you really want to have end result product that you can show off to say, here's an annual mortgage review. This is what I do for all my clients. Every year I produce this refinance proposal to show them whether it's a good time to refi or not. Oftentimes it's not, but I'm still going to tell you. I also do, and I'll show you the ones that I select. Let me break out my mobile phone here. Now, what I would recommend is when you're trying to get your let's call them story files. When you're trying to get those together, you want to isolate past transactions that you've done that you thought were really good. They were successful. The client had a good wow effect from them. They really were able to learn something new, or they felt that, what, that's exactly why I chose you as an originator, because you helped me understand this minor difference between the options, or you destigmatize the FHA question. Everybody's been talking about MI for the life of the loan, but you showed me it declines over the life of the loan. Didn't even know that, so totally going with you. Things like that, where it's an eye opener for somebody, you want to save those. So let's say that my combo loan refi, right? This is one I may have done for a specific borrower, but how do I make this one of my story files? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into that loan, or that scenario, go to my analysis screen. I'm going to copy this guy, and I'm going to copy it into a new client record because I don't want to affect the original. Now, when I do that, it's going to copy the entire presentation. So you can see I've got my existing first and second, pay off both, resub. But this is a new client record because it's got no first name on it. So when I'm creating my story files, I like using a keyword here. For me, it's mobile. You can use whatever you like, but I do mobile dash, and there we go. Mobile dash, and this would be resub proposal. And I don't need to do anything more. This is now a full record in my list. And if we take a look at the home list now, you can see I've got my combo loan refi, and then I've got the copy of it, which is called mobile resub proposal. Now let me get my reflector open for you. Give me just a second here. I'm going to pitch my phone onto the screen. There we go. Beauty. Now, when you go into your Mortgage Coach app, and hopefully everybody's got the Mortgage Coach app installed, there's two apps that you want to make sure you have: Mortgage Coach and Rate Watch. Rate Watch is your mortgage-backed security monitor. That's going to tell you when there's major movement in the marketplace. It's also going to alert you when one of your Mortgage Coach proposals gets viewed. But the Mortgage Coach Core app is what your clients are using to view your presentation. It's also what you're using, because you can log into it by simply hitting this little silhouette guy at the left, top left here. You can log into it to do things like add video, do Edge Live, or what I'm going to do right now, which is going to be a search. So I'm going to sign into it. I'm going to go to my client list. Now remember, the use case is I'm in the field. I'm talking to a new realtor partner, and we're talking about how we could potentially get a new relationship going here. We're going to have some mutual clients that we're working on. He's got some strategies, I've got some strategies. We want to work together to make this work. Well, Jacob, what do you do? What kind of education do you deliver? Well, let me break out my mobile phone, go to my client list. I'm going to do a search, and then in the first name field, I'm just going to search mobile, because that's the keyword I use for all my story files. And then when I hit search, you can see I've got a bunch of them that I've already designated here. I can rip through these and just show off, oh, here's a points versus no points scenario. Here's my annual mortgage review. Here's an FHA versus conventional, move up buyer, purchase power, rent versus own. You can see I got a few copies of that. Cost of waiting. These are all just my core proposals that I would put out there. And these are very generic. These aren't borrower specific in any way, but these are great for delivering my value prop to new people who want to understand what is it that I do that sets me apart as an originator from other people in my space. And certainly when you're talking to a realtor partner, you want to make sure that you can show them a co-branded presentation as well. So I would go to my partner list, and if I'm going to meet a new realtor prospect, I'm going to create an open house presentation specifically for them. I'm going to go to their website, I'm going to grab their photo, I'm going to grab their logo, and I'm going to produce a very generic open house presentation proposal. Now you can dig deeper on it. You can go to the MLS. You can go to Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com. You can find their listings and actually target a specific one they're working on in your area, and that's killer, because now you've got all the information about the property. You've got all their branding on it, and when you open it up, you can now show them, well, this is what I do with my realtor partners. As you can see here, I've got this rich media presentation in which we're not printing out an open house flyer here. We're doing an open house experience where I can record a video. We can record a video together if you want. Come down to my office, or let me break out my phone. I'll just hold it up like a selfie. We'll record our video together and cross-sell not only the financing options, but how beautiful this property is and how the listing price is perfect. It's ready to move. We can talk about all the things that are part of this. But now you've got this co-branded experience. This is really the most important thing to be able to show those realtor prospects is, yeah, I'm going to have my information over here on the left, but I'm going to have your information and branding on the right here. I'm going to have information about the property. We can even drive into things like property features. Again, these are checkboxes in the system when you're creating the open house presentation, and then you can do up to 4 customized property features in there too. So make sure don't forget about that. You got those custom ones, so you're not subject to just the checkboxes that we put out there. Now, the last part here is the payment options. We've kind of focused on the house. We're focusing on the property. We're focusing on the branding. Those are really the 2 most important things that I want to make sure my realtor partner knows about. But I also want to let them know that they don't have to be the expert on the financing options. The financing options here, you can see I've just got a very generic one, 30-year and a 15-year. These can obviously be modified. So when I'm talking, when I'm doing the video for my realtor partner, when I'm maybe I'm holding it up and doing it with him, I am going to talk about the financing options. I'm going to tell him, here's what it looks like at 20% down for a 15 or a 30, but we know you might have other details. You might have a unique situation. Let's talk more. tap the number here right next to my branding, give me a call, and I'll produce a presentation that shows you the short and long-term impacts of any type of loan that I can offer you. Those kind of things can go a long way because now they're no longer just looking at generics. I mean, anybody can go to a real estate calculator online, but really, how much does that tell me? Well, it doesn't tell me anything about my unique situation. And if the person has no idea about mortgages, they're not going to even know what to ask. So that's where you come in. That's where your video really needs to sell the point that you're an educator. We have about 10 minutes left. It looks like Anne has a question in here. She says, please show me how to add the realtor on that open house flyer. Okay. Let's take a look at that because that was actually going to be one of the other things I wanted to show you. Now, anytime you want to do an open house presentation, you're going to always start with new partner. So we'll hit new partner, and then we will start putting in their information. We'll call this one John Realtor. Put in as much or as little information as you have. Obviously, the more information, especially when it comes to branding, the better it's going to look on the output. And this is a realtor partner, so I'll go ahead and select that. Friendly name, let's say that this one is prospecting, and I'll use my area code. Now, street address, if you're pulling this direct from a listing, you have this information. A lot of the information we're going to be collecting here, you would get directly from the listing. Again, on Realtor, on Zillow, Redfin, MLS, whatever service you use to actually eyeball the listings, you can get all this information from it. So I'll just kind of use some generic stuff here. Now, the next part is we're asked about some of the basic property features. Now, when we looked at what is on the open house presentation here, the property features, there we go. The property features that we're looking at right here are things like the beds, bathroom, and square footage count. Those kind of things right there is what we're filling in on this screen. So asking price, square footage, let's say 1,500 square feet, 3 beds, 2 baths. Now, listing link, this is actually just for you. This is not going to appear on your presentation at all. So this is for you to make a note of where did you find this listing so you can get back to it. Primarily because, you guys know if something sells, you're not always going to be the first one to know. So you kind of want to check back on this listing, find out if it's undergone a price reduction, find out if it's been unlisted. I mean, there may be any number of things that could happen, but this will kind of give you a breadcrumb back to where you found that initially. Now, the features that I was telling you about, when we want to earmark those, we're going to go into more features. Now, before I go there, notice this checkbox here. This is kind of a new feature that we added not too long ago. It allows you to completely hide the property features off the presentation if you want to. And that's just primarily for people who really like to print these out. The right side of the print job will have all the property features on it. But if you'd like to be able to expand the graphics and expand the loan scenario options out to the far right margin, you can hide those features. So feel free to use that if you'd like. Personally, I like the way the features look, so I'm not going to hide them, but completely up to you. But when we go into our features here, we have some selections we can make. It's going to be a single family home, let's say 2-car garage, hardwood floors, central air and heat. I got a fireplace in there and maybe a spa. And then the custom features are down at the bottom here. So you check the box and then fill in whatever you want. So things like vaulted ceilings, maybe granite countertops, newly remodeled, which everybody says and is not true. And then let's say Irvine School District. So all the little extras that you find in the listing, you can certainly add up to 4 of them here. And then as we continue forward, we're asked for things like the property images. We're also later on going to be asked for the logo and photo for your realtor partner so that these appear on the branding. Michael has a great question. I'm going to get to that in just a moment, Michael. Let me get through the rest of the open house presentation. But his is, do you need to create a new partner for the same partner in the event that they have a new property? Or can we go to the save partner and update property info? You can actually add an additional analysis, Michael, and that's the best way to do it. I'll show you that in just a few minutes here. Let's rock this open house flyer out, and then we'll get over to that. Now, images images you can get directly off the listing, and most times you can simply right click on them and do save image as, save them locally to your machine, and then you can browse and upload them in here. I'm not going to go through that process because we've only got about 6 minutes left today. I want to make sure and respect your time. So I've got a couple of images on my computer that we can use. Let's see. Okay, there's a house image, perfect. And you can upload up to 3, and you can use up to 2. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to browse for another one. I think I've got another image that I can use here. There we go. Okay, obviously totally different house, but you get the idea. There's multiple images for a single house. You could have maybe a front view and then a back view or something like that. Maybe an internal view if the kitchen's really cool. Anything you'd like there. And then the description here, this didn't used to do a whole lot because in the browser, it's really not going to show up. But on mobile, it actually does show up. So you can put a detailed description here. I'll leave that there and so you can see what it looks like when we get to the output. I'm going to keep this simple, and forgive me for rushing on this. I'll do a regular FHA at 3.5. Let's say I get them at 4 on a 30-year term. Okay, I want everybody to be able to do this when you get off the call, okay? Okay, and then we'll throw a 15-year FHA. All right, cool. I've got my loan products in there. And now we get to the information where we're going to add additional details on the contact, on the partner himself or herself. This is the realtor's info. So this is really important because if you don't enter this, the branding is going to look really wonky on the realtor side because it's not going to have enough there. But let's say Remax Realtors, and fill in as much information as you have here. And email, say realtor@partner.com. The email is actually really important. Not only does it show up on the branding as a clickable item, but this enables you to make sure that this partner can get notified anytime this presentation is viewed. So if they share this presentation on their social media, because they want to share this listing, they're going to get that same notification you get that says, hey, your open house presentation has just been viewed for 4 minutes and 50 seconds. Or make sure you get their licensing in there and then their website. Street address, not important at all. This is one where I would say you can leave this blank if you want. There is a little placeholder for it. So what I like to do with the street address field, I like to put a tagline there. Best realtor in OC. Nobody cares where the realtor works. You're always going to meet them at the property. So that's why I usually eliminate that one. Now, headshot and logo. This is your realtor partner's headshot and logo. So you'd need to, again, right-click on their images and save them. You can get them from their website, their social media. They have them all over the place. Realtors tend to have more images than anybody out there, so they're pretty easy to find. But let's go for some headshots here. Oh, there we go. There's my generic man face. And generic logo, perfect. So this is my realtor's information. Now finally, I get to the end of it. I'm going to select the open house presentation. And then I can put in a payment title here. You can see I've put in Own Your Dream House Now. My pricing label, this is, what are you calling the price? Is this listed at? Is it sales price? Is it asking price? Whatever you want to call it. But this is just the prefix for what you put before the listing price. So I'll put sales price. You can certainly have some default verbiage in the notes field that you can fill in. You can see what I've done here. That actually just makes it a little bit easier so I remember to do certain things that my compliance department might require. And then finally, you get to the part where you can select where you want to position the images. So the first image, I want that to be this one. The second image, I'm going to make it that guy. Now that I've done that, when I go to the finalized version of the presentation, both of those images are going to appear on there. And when we get to mobile, you can actually switch between them. It's kind of cool. So we'll generate this link, and while that's going on my mobile device, I am going to enter that link so we can see what it looks like. All right, so let's check out what it looks like in the browser. So you can see I've got my two property images up here at the top. I've got my standard verbiage that it's not a loan estimate, CFP requires. I've got my 30 FHA, a 15-year FHA, just some basic financing options. You can see it does show the payment stream, and you know you've done an FHA right when you see a payment stream that changes every 12 months because your MI recalculates every 12 months based on the outstanding balance. And then you've got things like fee detail, which is shown right here, and that's for each one of the options. There's my property features that I was telling you about. And then, I use the same images on both sides, but you can see what I mean. This is my branding here. This is going to be my partner's branding. A new thing that was just added a couple of days ago, we used to show just the full PITI payment here as a number. We've broken it out. So you can see the P&I is down in the blue area, and then the monthly costs are up in the orange area. This also comes through in print. So when we go to print this, it's going to show that striation in the graphs for us, and we can see exactly which part of the payment is what. Now, the reason I showed you that ability to hide the property features is if you're doing 4 products here, it can get pretty bunched up. So sometimes people like to hide the property features so it pushes this information over to the right and opens up a little bit more space for them. All right, so let's take a look at what this looks like in the mobile app. So I'll go over to my partner list, and this was, what did I call him? That was John Realtor. Okay. Give me a second. I'm just doing my search right now. I guess I can bring that back up so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so there's my guy. Go to the open house flyer and view the presentation. Oh, this is actually a different John Realtor report, but this one actually I used a totally different type of image for. You can see the co-branding left and right side here. You can see the property information, basics up at the top, property features, and payment options. And it looks like there's a couple more questions. I know we're running a little over, but thanks for sticking with me, guys. Les says, I love the realtor headshots that were taken 20 years ago. Shock when you meet the person. Oh, yeah, that is always a killer. I've seen lots of those presentations come across my desk, and then you look at the listing, and this goes for originators too, Les, where you see their image was 20 years ago, and you meet them, and it's like, whoa, what happened? All right, Anne has a question. How come I created a similar process, but my realtor partner did not appear at the bottom right? I suspect you may not have uploaded some of the images on, but if you would, email our support team, support@mortgagecoach.com. Just let them know what you're trying to do and what problem you ran into. They should be able to help you out with it. But in either case, I'm guessing for some reason some of the realtor information didn't get saved or didn't get uploaded. Also, one of the gotchas on the open house presentation, just for those of you who haven't created these yet, if you don't see any property images showing up in the browser here, the reason is you haven't earmarked any of them to actually do that. So in Edge, oh, and Michael, I will get to your question as well. I'll show you that in just a second. When you get to the section where you're selecting what property is, if you have it set on none, like you will initially, you'll see that you're not going to have any images on your finalized presentation. So you need to make sure and go into each one and select which one you want to use for the first image. If you've got 2 images, select the one you want to use for the second image. Once you do that and trigger a save, then your property images are going to show up on your final presentation. If you don't select the images, those are going to be blank. All right, let's take a look at Michael's question. So, and this is really important for those guys who are doing multiple listings for a single realtor partner. Do I have to redo all the work again? The answer is no. Now, when we look at this, I've got this John Realtor from Remax Realtors, right? I've already got all his information. I've got all his branding in there. What if I want to do a second listing for him? Do I go back in and change the original? No, because that now negates the old proposal I did. So if he's got that back in social media somewhere, I've changed the information that link is showing. So it may not be relevant to where he's posted it. So the better way to do this is you can drive into that presentation, go into the analysis screen. Now you can copy this analysis if you want to bring everything with it. So you want these financing options, but you want them for a different property. You can copy it, but copy it under the current partner instead of as a new partner. What this does is it keeps all the branding. So John Realtor stuff is already there. His contact info is already there. His images are already there. The only thing I need to do is change the property information because this is going to be for a new listing. So I'll just change this around. I'll upload some new images. And then this one will have its own link that's completely separate from the original one I did. So I can use this immediately. Now, the other way to do this is in your home screen. If you don't find them in your list here, go to your View All section and do a search for that partner. And then when you find the one that you're looking at, and you can see I've done this a few hundred times. There's the one I did today, right? This is the John Realtor that I wanted to do a new option for. But you can see I have two different presentations under here. That's because of my copy that I just showed you. Now, if I want to do an additional one, all I have to do is hit Add Analysis. It'll say, do you want to do this? I hit yes, and now it's completely blank except for the branding. So partners images and contact info is in there, but the products are blank. The property image or property area is blank. It's ready to go for a new one. So with that said, I hope that answers your question, Michael. Thanks for bringing that one up. That's a great one, and I'm sure a lot of people got some value out of that. But any other questions that you guys have, just shoot a quick note over to our support team. We're always happy to help. We're here from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Pacific time. Just shoot us a note at support@mortgagecoach.com. Let us know what the problem is. Include a link if you would, because that helps us to identify what's going on, and we'll make sure we can get you taken care of. So with that, I did record this call. I'll be posting it in our coaching call archive within a couple hours here. But outside of that, have a wonderful day, everybody. Look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye-bye.